Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome along once again to Evolution Sim Racing. It's our GT4 TCR multi-class series where the drivers meet for round 5 of the championship. Tonight we arrive at the penultimate visit in our little US tour tonight around the city of Sebring in Florida for an extended championship format of one 15-minute sprint race ahead of one 45-minute feature race tonight, of course, with 150 points on the table for only the third time this season. Joining me in the commentary box once again is Mr. Dara Thacker. And Dara, after tonight, we've reached the halfway point of the season. We start to see those drop rounds included in the overall championship standings, and with those additional 50 points on offer tonight, it's a good opportunity for some drivers to make that mark, get set up with some good form ahead of the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a real shake-up in terms of what we're looking at for the championship battles when drop rounds are applied. Of course, some drivers have been able to be really consistent. I did have a look yesterday, actually, at where the drop rounds would apply. Right now, someone like Logan McKenzie would have to drop 2 wins and 100 points on a weekend because he's been that consistent over the course of the season. So I think that some drivers that are doing really well maybe pegged back a touch, and we could see a bit of a balancing out in terms of some of these championships.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a little run through that order because I've done the same sort of stuff. So we can take a look at how some of the drivers in the championship are being affected more than others, with it being the first week that those have been brought into play. But before that, let's take a quick look at the sponsors and the calendar for the remainder of the championship season. So as always, big thanks to Kame, the GPT Group, and Keenan Eco Energy for their continued support of this series. And I'm sure the drivers are now really starting to get a feel for whether they're going to be able to get a hand on those championship trophies, of course, provided by Kame. So big thanks to those three, as always. Now then, quick look at the calendar. As we said, halfway through already. Sebring tonight for that extended championship format. Of course, the 3x 20-minute races offer 150 points as well. But tonight is only the second time this season that drivers will have to contend with that pit stop strategy. So an interesting circuit to make it happen. Pretty tricky circuit with some, tricky traction zones and difficult asphalt to deal with. So will certainly be intriguing during that longer sprint, the longer feature format. And of course, no reverse grid in the offing tonight. So let's take a look at the GT4 Pro Class standings to begin with then. And first, we round off with the man who is in brilliant form and on a nice 400 points, which is lovely in round. He's been in some fine form since the second round of the season. He's been winning, as you can see, ever since. He's the first man that we talk about to drop some points. So 68 points have been dropped by William this season, and that will, of course, have come from his first round in Zolder. Ben Smith closely behind him, though, 49 points. Worse off, and he's dropped a few more. He's actually dropped 85 points off the back of Humphrey. So William the beneficiary at the moment. Next up though, it's Mr. Yannis Olbert, who's still in third place, hasn't dropped anything. The 2 DNFs that he got this time last week would have been his drop rounds. It's good that he is still where he is inside the top 3. Mario Sidma not far behind though. He of course switched over to the Porsche last week, which makes it 5 Porsches inside the top 5. It's only a top 12 consisting of Mercedes and Porsche, so pretty clear at the moment what the favoured car is. Thomas Pugh rounding out the top 5, closely followed by Adam Atherton, the championship-leading Mercedes for Lumen Pulse, ahead of Joe Sparrow and Jeremy Ulemans inside the top 8. Very close gaps between those three. Joe, Jeremy and Stephen only separated by 6 points as it stands. A little bit of a gap down to Lauren den Ouden, who is our Dutch driver, just inside the top 10, ahead of Jeff Hibbert and Jacob Jenner, who's staying there or thereabouts, but sadly for Jacob, yet to get himself inside the top 5 all season, just about managing to get inside the top 10.
Intriguing to see how that battle's going to play out this evening. Over in the GT4 AM standings, it's going to be Niels Kula, who is still top of the tree. He will have dropped last week's points from Long Beach, as will Robin L. Brown in second place. So not a good day for either one of those drivers. And for the moment, they can forget about it as if it never happened. And those two still lead the championship by a decent margin. 45 points is the advantage for Niels Kula. We'll see if that will change tonight at Sebring. Liam Fraser really did well last week. 2 wins, shooting himself up into what should be quite a nice bit of contention in this championship battle. 76 points back, but definitely a contender. A drop round at the moment of 81 points, so definitely in range here. Really interesting to see what he'll be able to do tonight. Luke Bailey as well, keeping himself around that top 3, trying to get himself back inside that top 3, and of course aim for a trophy. For Glass Velen, Dean Sheesby, John LeBrook and Edward Grove, they're all just over that 200 point mark, and all battling in that mid pack of the class. We've got Charlie Stottard in 9th, and Rob Gregg in 10th will be looking to get himself in towards the top 8 tonight, at least over that 200 points threshold. Daniel Paul and Matt Stace in 11th and in 12th. We'll see what they can do from there. But we've also got a couple of other drivers, Joseph Preston, Dennis Curler, who could be trying to get into the top 10 tonight.
I must say, notably there, not congratulations, but well done to Mr. Gregg, the only McLaren in the field inside the GT4 category, not just in class, inside the entire category, to get himself inside the top 12 and even the top 10. So good effort by the Moonshiner Racing Club driver to pick a little bit of a different machine, but actually make it work. So let's take a look then at the TCR class first with the pro standings. It's Mr. Andrew McKinley who leads the way at the moment with 381 points. So a few points behind Humphrey, for example, leading the way in the pro class. Hasn't been able to score to get himself up to 400, and he, of course, hasn't dropped any points so far, having missed the opening round in Zolder. It's been a pretty good start ever since, though, and he actually had his worst result of the season, barring that first round, last time out around Long Beach. So let's see, can he get himself back up onto the top step of the podium, and be sure that that would have been his aim. He has, however, taken the place of Logan McKenzie, who has done very well at the front of the championship for the majority of the season. But as you said, Dara, he's had to drop 2 wins from last week at Long Beach. Can you believe it? He scored more points in the Virginia round due to the format of the session. And so last week, even though he got 2 wins, that's the round that he's dropped. So he's lost 100 points due to this system, which therefore promotes Mr. McKinley into the P1 space. 50 points the difference at the moment. Jaden Scotton, he's not far behind either, just 19 points away from these guys, and he has dropped 51 points himself as well. Anthony Hilton inside the top 4, closely followed by Scott Malcolm, about as close as you can be. Only 1 point the difference for the Lumen Motorsports driver. Keith Calhoun will be inside the top 6 yet again. 2 P5s at the start of the season, 2 P4s around Virginia. Hasn't got himself up onto the podium. He's the first driver there outside the top 5 not to get onto the podium. Max Evan Charney will be next, and again it's another tight haul from him down to Kevin Marshall, say the Audi driver. And then it's Jake Corley on a nice rounded 200 points. Wasn't with us this time last week, but he is on track tonight, currently inside the top 3 during the practice session. So Jay's back, and let's see if he can continue that form. James Howarth rounds out the top 10 ahead of Alak Nyanga, who missed a handful of rounds, still doing well to be in this graphic. And then it's Branko Kupovic after him. All of his points scored around Road America, and so far it's enough to keep him inside the top 12.
Finally, over in the TCR amps, we've got the closest championship battle that there is around the ESR GT4 TCR series Season 2, and that's in the TCR amps. 3 points it is between Gordon Hales and Hassarian Sarakadesla. Mind you, though, Sarakadesla dropping no points after not turning up at Long Beach. Well, not being able to be here last week at Long Beach. Gordon Hales dropping 95 points at the moment. And take your pick, Zolder or Long Beach, Gordon 95 in both. So he has a very high threshold, and even if he doesn't do too well tonight, he's got 95 points in his back pocket to score. Rob Smith is a little bit further back, but still close in the championship battle. Only 31 points off the top of the tree, and then it's a bit of a bigger gap back. Jason Haddington leading a bit of a gaggle of drivers. He's in 4th. Steve Rubino, Andrew Fellows, Mark Parkhurst and Dean Sargent all over that 200-point threshold, but pretty close together. Rubino and Fellows, mind you, almost couldn't get closer. And with Rubino not attending Virginia, there's definitely some points that I think he'll be feeling like he can gain around some others in the coming few weeks. We've got Martin Kenyon in P9, just ahead of Danny Weir in P10. Those two consistent results have kept them inside the top 10. We'll see if they can try and claim a first podium of the season for Kenyon, a second of the season for Danny Weir in tonight's races. David Randalls and Reese Kitley find themselves in 11th and in 12th. And we'll see if anybody else can challenge them tonight, or if Kitley can get some more points on the board to get himself over that 100-point threshold.
Yeah, very tight championship indeed, and thankfully we do have Sarakadesla on the track tonight, so he'll challenge Gordon all the way after missing the round last week. A quick look at the standings in the teams before we head to trackside. The drivers just making their way around the circuit now for their outlap, so we'll be with them by the time we set the first flying laps. It's Team Shelter who lead the way at the moment. We saw the notable names there inside that pro class in the TCRs, and it's those three, Logan McKenzie, Jay Corley and Anthony Hilton for Team Shelter, who lead the way, but looking really all the way down to the top 6. The swing isn't that great. 100 points separating those 6 teams, and with so many points on offer, it really can change just like that. Kame GP2, though, at the moment sitting just in behind the Team Shelter leaders. That's Noel Brown, Ludbrook, and Sarakadesla, who again, I think, should all be with us. I know for a fact that 2 of them are. Let's see if Ludbrook attends later on. Lumen Pulsar next, the 2-man army of Adam Atherton and Gordon Hales, of course, split across the 2 categories. Then it's the GlassTech Racing DXT team of Yanis Olbert, William Humphrey and Francois Brandet, ahead of Lumen Flux, Ben Smith, Sergio Ferreira and Keith Calhoun. It's Flatline, Lumen Motorsports, Axis Sim Sports Blue, Moonshiners Racing Club, and then another Flatline Racing Green to round out the top 10 in the standings. And Dara, as if it wasn't time to perfection, here's Francois Brandet coming around the final corner, about to start his first qualifying lap.
Yeah, we've done that pretty well, I think, and we'll see what Brandet can do on it. What should be his first qualifying lap time as he comes across the line. Difficult track here at Sebring, of course, very bumpy around here. Former airfield on the Floridian Peninsula, but it's all part of the charm, isn't it, of the circuit here. Let's see what Brandet can do as he works his way into turn 2. He's hitting that apex. He's being a little bit careful on these curbs. Very high through the opening couple of corners here at Sebring, and can very much spit you out in a way that you won't be enjoying. Making your way down towards the hairpin is going to be critical, however. Probably the biggest overtaking spot on the circuit if you can get it right down the inside here. If you go past the hotel, we'll have to see how Brandet can keep, if he can keep this lap together.
Yeah, it seems like it's going so far so good. Tracks will be coming up. Tyres and the overall temperatures will be rising as the guys head around the circuit, so plenty of opportunity to improve as the lap go on. But he makes his way now through toward the second sector, driving the Porsche Dara, which we know is such a strong car. Generally though, around a track like this, so bumpy, some not uneven surfaces, but you know, the asphalt's not the greatest. I think we might see this car particularly dominant around here tonight. Of course, the Mercedes known for it being very good on the curbs, and there's a lot of curb riding as we see Francois there tackling that inside curb on the right hand side. And the Mercedes quite a forgiving car, but something tells me that the Porsche might be the one to come out on top tonight.
Yeah, it's almost the old faithful, isn't it, really, the Porsche. I think it'll be an interesting one just to see how this one, or how it can cope for some of these drivers. I'm sure they'll have quite a bit of confidence in the cars they've picked. Some maybe looking at other cars thinking, God, I wish I was in that. But, you know, if you're Francois Brandet, you're going to be pleased with the Porsche. You're going to feel a little bit more comfortable. And with it being the car generally of choice for a lot of these drivers, I think we may see a real battle on how well these drivers can handle the car around a circuit such as this. And it is quite a long circuit. It's easy to make a little mistake on a lap and all but ruin the lap, or even bring the lap back to you with so many corners to try and gain that time back compared to your rivals. Brandet, that will be first across the line. He will set the benchmark with 7.5 minutes left to go in qualifying. And as we see the likes of Ulemans and Ludbrook come across the line, it seems that Brandet's lap time wasn't valid, Joe.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're looking at 208, probably high 208s. That's what Humphrey has managed to do there as he crosses the line. Now, as Aubert shares the front row of the grid at the moment. A good start for the GlassTech DXT team. There's Marius Hibmer, who's next to cross the line. And again, just outside those 208s. I was seeing discussions before the session, people thinking that the mid 208s would probably be a pretty strong qualifying time. So let's see if William can get much more out of that. I'm sure he will improve as he heads around his second of 3 laps. So keep an eye out on those mini sectors. 6 sectors on 7, in fact, 7 sectors around this circuit. And so plenty of opportunity, as you see, to see guys improving or not. We can see at the bottom there, most of these guys improving on their second laps. Howarth with a purple sector in his class. As for the TCRs, it's Andrew McKinley, the championship leader at the moment, who is at the front of his field, and Gordon Hales, the same can be said about him. A 2:14.5 and a 2:15.4, 9/10, separating the two men at the front of the TCR classes.
Let's see if that can stay, whether we can see a bit of a tightening in that. Hales with quite an advantage, particularly for P3, with Jason Haddington of, 1.7, nearly 1.8 seconds over P3. Incredible amount of time that he has got over the rest. I think what's really interesting is the fact that we have this format of 50 minutes and 45 minutes races tonight, is that race 1 is going to be, all of 7 laps? I don't think we're going to be able to even get an 8th in, so we may even... Well, it's going to be close whether it's 6 or 7, to be fair. It's that much of a long circuit. It's going to be, of course, longer in the 45-minute race, but real frantic sprint in the opening 15 minutes, and drivers are going to have to move every single corner they can, otherwise they may not be able to make the moves that they're hoping for.
Yeah, of course, the finishing positions of that very short sprint race will determine the grid, so it's really important for those guys to try and improve where they can, particularly at the opening phase, of the race, get themselves in the best position they can ahead of that longer 45-minute session. Of course, the longest session that we'll have all season, and it's definitely a different thing for some of these drivers to think about as Andrew McKinley crosses the line, does improve and extends that lead to nearly 8/10 of a second ahead of Jay Corley. Nils Culler leads Robin Noah Brown at the front of the Premier standings. He's got Jeremy Ulemans on track, the pro driver in between them at the moment. Again, 6/10 the difference between the two drivers fighting for that championship. And looking up and down the grid, as we can see there, Dara, quite big gaps actually between the pole man in each class and the man sharing the front row of the grid with him.
Very much some leads that are looking like they're being built up by a few of these drivers. Confidence in their cars, no doubt. And yeah, championship leaders excelling once again this evening. I think for Logan McKinsey, it's going to be slightly worrying to be down there in 10th at the moment. Of course, we're expecting another lap time from him, considering that his best is a 2:26. But for the time being, Andrew McKinley being that far out in front will concern him. I think it's a concern for everybody, really, if you're not a championship leader. If you're seeing the championship leaders just that far in front of the rest, because, you know, if you're trying to catch a driver, the first thing you can do is try and beat them in qualifying, and if you're not even able to get anywhere close, it's going to be slightly demoralising, I'm sure.
It will be. It will be. We've got a whole cluster of these guys coming down the back straight now towards Sunset Bend, the final corner on the circuit. I think the first man across the line is going to be Jeremy Ulemans. Here he comes then into the final right-hander of the circuit, probably the trickiest corner on the track. It's so inviting to try and carry the speed around that corner, but if you lose it, it's very easy to end up drifting out left into the tyre barrier. Does Jeremy improve? No, he doesn't, sadly for him. William Humphrey has just crossed the line, and he has not improved either. Yannis Aubert has stepped up into the second row of the grid, demoted back down at the P4 by Ben Smith, who's right in there in behind Humphrey, but the gap's still quite big. Robin Brown heads around the final corner as well. He's got some time to find if he wants to get ahead of his teammate, and of course ahead of Nils Kuller. Does enough to get ahead of his teammate by just about a tenth of a second, but not enough to catch up with Nils, who looks as though he's got the pace over the majority of these guys tonight. Here comes Joseph Preston in that Mercedes.
Around the final corner comes that green and black machine in the Mercedes, looking ominous as it comes around Sunset Bend. Let's see if he can end the session on a bit of a high. The 241, is it going to jump up any higher than the double one? Yes, it will, into P10, and onto what would be notionally row number 5 for that GT4 AM class. Of course, they will mix in with the GT4 Pro, so it won't necessarily be on the same row as Class Velen. But with a time as close as that, you'd be hard-pressed to say that those two Mercedes won't be starting next to each other by the time we see the green flag in just only a few minutes' time.
Logan McKenzie popped up right toward the top. I believe he was outside the top 10 for most of that qualifying session, struggling to get a lap together, but he's converted a time of a 2:14.094, good enough to pip pole position by 0.2 of a second. Danny Weir making his way around the final couple of sectors now. James Howarth is about to cross the line in that DXT PG Tips livery, currently in P7. It's not going to be an improvement for Howarth either. Daniel Poole, 12th in the GT4 AM class, doesn't improve either. Next is going to be Dean Sheesby, P8 in the GT4 AM class. Once again, in the Porsche, improving in sectors 1, 2, and 4, but nowhere else. Let's see, he's got just about 0.2 that he needs to do to get one place, and he does get them, just as Liam Fraser steps up there as well. That's Sheesby into the top 6 then.
Good to see Sheesby there. Good to see a few of the drivers up there who haven't necessarily been in championship contention so far this season, trying to get themselves into positions that would score themselves some big points, which is always a positive. Grobe going ever so slightly faster. They get himself to a 2-minute 10.511, and there's only going to be time for another couple of cars to cross the line here. Danny Weir is one of them, but I'm not convinced he's improving on that lap time. Every single sector so far slower than the previous, and he will stay down in P9 in that TCR AM category. No improvement for him. What about Rob Smith? He may be improving. I'll keep an eye on the 14, but there's another couple of cars, including Lawrence Van Uden, or Den Uden, I should say, Joe.
Yeah, well, I spoke to my resident Dutchman in chat, Mr. Nick Stubber, the other day, and, he disconnects because that's the end of the session. Apparently, it's Laurens den Ouden, so I'm going to try and remember that pronunciation. But yeah, he couldn't improve on his lap time there, sadly. He will start in P10 in class as the session quickly comes to an end. You know, if you make a couple of mistakes around here, drop us a couple of seconds, then it's very difficult to get those lap times finished. So, as we head around on the formation lap, let's take a run through of the grid for what will be, as Dara rightly said, a very short, very snappy sprint race, 15 minutes and only a handful of laps ahead of these drivers to set the grid for the feature race, and that's where the points, well, the most of the points are made up. So William Humphrey will convert pole position once again with a time of a 2:08.628, and he is 0.4 ahead of his championship rival, Mr. Ben Smith. The 3-1-2 will share the front row. Mario Sidmer and Yannis Aubert will share the second row of the grid, just about within half a second. That's quite a big margin. If Humphrey can get away off the line again, it could spell good news. Thomas Pugh and Nils Kuller will take pole position in the GT4 AM class on row 3, ahead of Robin Brown and Jeremy Ulemans inside the top 8. John Ludbrook and Liam Fraser will start ahead of Jeff Hibbert and Edouard Grobe on row 6, and then there's Dean Sheesby and Luke Bailey in P14. Francois Brandet there, rounding out the top 15. Josh Parra, Rob Gregg, Klaas Vellen, Joseph Preston and Matt Stace will round out the front 10 rows of the grid. Then it's Laurens den Ouden ahead of Mitchell Costas, Daniel Poole and Logan McKenzie, the first of our TCR Pro Class drivers on row 12, ahead of Andrew McKinley, the championship rival, starting the session side by side with one another. They'll start ahead of Jaden Scotton, who's next in line. So the top 3 start in order. So then Jay Coley and Max Nevincharny in the top 28 with Gordon Hales and Ashley Brooks. So then Scott Malcolm, James Howarth, Anthony Hilton and Rob Smith ahead of Keith Calhoun, Martin Kenyon, Hussein Sadaka Desler and Kevin Marshall say the top 38. Jason Haddington and Andrew Fellows will round out the top 40, and it will be Steve Rubino and Danny Weir ahead of Dean Sargent, who were last to set their lap times, and it will be Charlie Stothard, who was with us serving, I believe, his qualifying ban this week, and he will start. It's either from the pit lane or from the back of the grid. Let me just confirm that real quick. That will be a back of the grid start and a drive-through for the 206.
What he can do from there then? It's going to be quite a long way back, that's fair to say, but Sebring is a place where collisions can happen, incidents can occur, and you may be able to put yourself back up the order, so definitely a chance for Charlie Stothard to work his way through, and of course race 1 sets the grid for race 2, and he'll be right towards the back of the field, or maybe in the midst of the field for that one, so definitely a chance for him to pick up some decent points in his race tonight. Let's go see if he can keep it clean and avoid picking up another qualifying ban, which is clearly going to hinder him throughout this season.
Yeah, note on that as well. The championship leader, Humphrey, is only 2 points away from his first penalty as well. So he needs to really, well, do what he's done for the vast majority of his championship with us here. Doesn't really get caught up in things. It's hard to do when you're so far in the lead. But if he was to get caught up in another steward's ticket, then we would see him starting at the back of the grid in the next couple of weeks, which could really shape up the championship with Ben Smith so close in behind him. For the time being, though, he's just got to look forward, try and get a good start off the line. As you said, Dara, about 7 or 8 laps at maximum ahead of these guys in this first race. And in the end, we have 44 cars. It was looking quite quiet for the majority of practice, but in the end, 3/4 of the championship have turned up, which is always great to see.
Yeah, good to see the numbers are up once again. We always get some great guys here in ESR, and everybody, it feels like, is warming to the competition, warming to the league. Some new drivers in this as well. They're kind of getting used to what it's like here at ESR, and they're coming week on week, and it is great to see. Most of the session is filled, which means A, we're going to get a lot of racing, Joe, and B, you're going to have a hard time trying to find what to look at. That's the trouble. Well,
that is the trouble, and you're totally right, but fingers crossed that Logan gives us a nice little gap to the back of the GT4 pack, and that will give us a chance to get those quicker cars through the first couple of corners, and then we can catch on board with what's going on with that TCR pack. You can see how far the grid is spread, bearing in mind just seeing Humphrey there leave the picture at the front, and we can barely even see the back of the TCR pack. Of course, a few more cars on offer. I think split between the two grids. It might be just 1 or 2 more in that TCR category. And only the 4 manufacturers, not even actually 3 manufacturers, isn't it? The 2 Hyundais and the Honda and the Audi. So a little bit of a less of a spread, but nonetheless, it's making for one hell of a championship. Let's join on with the front, should I say, of the GT4s as they about to make their way around the final corner. And once again, the pace car will peel in. It'll be up to Humphrey to drop the hammer anytime after the green flag and before that start-finish line. I'll give you this one to you, Dara, if you'd like to take us away.
Yeah, go on then. Looking forward to this race. 15 minutes worth of frantic action here at Sebring. William Humphrey will lead us to the green. Let's see if anybody can challenge him this time. All of his points that are on the standings right now are from wins. He's looking to make it 9 in a row as we're about to go racing here at Sebring. 15 minutes are underway, and it's the 3.98 to get us going. And what a good start it looks like it's going to be for Humphrey as he gets down towards turn number 1. Challenger behind, though, and Ben Smith's going to be under a little bit of pressure as they work their way through the opening corner. They'll keep themselves, though, nice and calm through the opening couple of bumps, and you can see them fanning out behind 2, maybe even 3 wide as they make their way to turn 2, right in the mid-pack of the GT4s. But in the TCRs, it looks pretty stable towards the front. Logan McKinsey is going to catch up to the GT4s that are caught in the Constantina effect, but it seems that he's got away well, and Andrew McKinley is going to be held at bay for the time being.
Yeah, one change in the order in the AM class. Robin Noel Brown has taken Nils Culler off the line, so Noel Brown leads in class there as they make the way down into what is the first heaviest braking zone in turn 7 at the hairpin, and we can see now all the cars on the stoppers. Are some of them going to go 3 wide there? The Mercedes pretty deep on the right-hand side of the circuit now. Here come the TCRs, all seemingly getting away and through this corner quite nicely. At the front, though, Humphries has a nice little gap ahead of Ben Smith. And we've got Jeremy Ulemans, who's just about going up the inside of, I think that's Liam Fraser, out of class at the moment. Yannis Aubert under pressure from Marius Hibmer at the front. Humphrey, though, has got away well and could look to extend that gap. There's been a pass, these two going side by side.
Yannis Aubert made a bit of a dive to the inside down at the hairpin. We may have to go back and look at that at some point if we can, maybe during the warm-up, if we have all watching sessions. That was quite a crazy send. I think he overtook two cars doing so, Smith and Hibmer, but since lost the position back to Ben Smith. So that was quite an aggressive one from Aubert. Up to P3 though. We'll see if the 3-2-1 can try and maintain some progress in this race and try and get himself towards the front too, and join his teammate William Humphrey on what could be well, you know, not a front row because it'll be slightly... Oh, it's not reverse, is it, Joe? I'm going crazy. A fantastic starting position for Yannis Aubert in comparison to Ben Smith. And after Aubert's double DNF last week, I'm sure he'd like the points. And if he wants to keep himself in title contention, he really has to be starting to pick them up now.
Yeah, he does. I think he'll know that he's, you know, considering the results that he's had, he's in a pretty good position at the moment. And obviously, if he doesn't have any more stinkers, then that round last week will be his to drop. So he can really look to go on here. Looking to get a good run out of the corner is Noel Brown, challenging the drivers in the top 5. He's gone for a move here on a car out of his class. They've managed to keep it away from each other. All the while, though, Nils Kuller is invited back into this pack. Early doors, pretty tricky for these guys to get away well. And look at this. Kuller already has the run. He's got the inside line, crucially, on Noel Brown, and that aggression there by Noel Brown to try and get past Thomas Pugh might have just cost him the race lead in class as it stands. Oh, contact between the two of them. He's moved back over to the left-hand side. Has Noel Brown. Kuller takes that place. A little bit of door banging, but that's okay. They've both survived the hairpin for the second time, and that's Kuller back into the lead. This battle will continue for some time, I'm sure, and Ulemans is also still side by side with Fraser.
Yeah, Nils Kuller just about keeping himself in front. As you can see, Liam Fraser, careful there. Nearly one of the pro drivers going into the back of Robin Noel Brown. That's the 315 of Jeremy Ulemans, who's in P6 in class, but will now be in P9 overall, with 3 AM drivers directly in front of him. That'll be a slight issue for him, I'm sure. They'll be looking to get past. But of course, no discussion can be made at all about reverse grids tonight, Joe. Drivers will be trying to go forward from the word go tonight, because they've got absolutely nothing to lose. And because the further forward you can go in race 1, the better starting position you're going to be able to have in race 2. There is no consideration about trying to get yourself a better starting position at all.
There's been an issue for Logan McKinsey, championship challenger, who's entered the pit lane on the second lap, and he is now right the way down the order. P43 on track, P10 in class, quite a way off the back of the field. I'm going to try to see if I can figure out what happened to Logan. But for the time being then, that's Andrew McKinley leading Jaden Scotton and Jay Corley, the top 3 in the TCR Pro class. And here is Ashley Brooks, who's in P25 overall. He's leading the way as they head through into Sunset Bend for the second time, these drivers. And now back onto the start-finish line. Good position for Brooks at the moment. I think the last time we saw him lead a race was around Zolder, very early on in the season. Then it all came undone with that incident. So let's see, he's only got 10 minutes to go here. He has got a bit of pace in behind him, the likes of Hales and Sarika Desler. But if he keeps his car in the right direction, he could have a chance here with it being a pretty short race.
Yeah, it helps that there's not going to be too much time for pressure to be applied to him in this race. We'll see if he can convert. And of course, if he is able to convert, he will start the second race from the lead in class. So that's going to be an important point for Ashley Brooks. I mean, as we see, we're going to have a bit of a look at a replay of Logan McKinsey coming through the final corner. It looks like he's going into the pit lane. Yeah, he's not hit into the pit lane. He comes in with his damage. I was going to mention the point about a race leader in the TCR AM class, and we've got Ashley Brooks still there. The fact that he hasn't been here since Zolder means he's a bit of an unknown, but this kind of result would shoot him. Well, I'd say shoot him. It would put him into P11 in the championship, keep him well out of contention. So for Gordon Hales, he doesn't necessarily mind Ashley Brooks leading. He's just losing about 5 points himself.
Our resident safety car expert and on-track medic, Rob Mackay, tells us that Logan's picked up a meatball on the first lap. So he's been forced into the pit lane to serve that, well, not to serve anything, but to fix up his machinery. And that is the cause of his incident. So huge, as we said, for the championship at the moment. And Ashley Brooks under a little bit of pressure, out of class. This is James Howarth at the moment, who's in behind, keen to get past in equal machinery. Let's see how the run is out of the final corner. Looks like Howarth has the upper hand. He may be wise to try and get past Brooks here on the entry into Sunset. Let's see if either of these drivers will choose to defend. It looks like it's going to be a pretty straightforward pass for Howarth at the moment. Brooks has cleared him. He's going to come back over and get that move done. And the gap you can see there to the guys toward the back of the shot, that's Brooks's competition at the moment, and those two getting very close indeed. Let's head back up to the leaders of the GT4. We've got Luke Bailey under a little bit of pressure in this pack. Jeff Hibbard, Rod Glegg and Klaas Vellen, the drivers in behind him at the moment.
Yeah, let's see how this one develops. With half the race already elapsed in this one, Luke Bailey wouldn't mind to go forward, but he's having to look behind him. That's the issue for the time being. The GT4 AM category is, I think, going to be a little bit more open if Noel Brown can stay where he is in comparison to Niels Kula. Liam Fraser as well, trying to follow up good results last week with another good result and maybe even a podium to kick off tonight's racing. Ludbrook and Grove still in the fight though, and you can see how close this gaggle of cars is as they work their way towards Cunningham Corner. Fraser will be able to hold on though for the Moonshiners Racing Club, and that orange livery will stay ahead. The dark blue and orange of John Ludbrook, even though the 214 looks very keen to get through.
Yeah, it's a great battle at the moment. The two leaders really starting to get away now. 2.5 seconds ahead of Fraser, which is probably just about right. Those two battling in the championship. Fraser hanging on to that top 3, both on the track and in the championship. Of course, Ludbrook inside the top 7, and then looking in behind, Edward Grobe is right up there as well, just behind Ludbrook, 7 points in the championship. So these guys really feisty at the moment. Not too many gaps not too many close gaps in the GT4 Pro class, although Ben Smith closing in on William Humphrey, just 0.6 of a second at the moment. Is Ludbrook going to think about it? Got awfully close to that inside wall. Tricky for the Mercedes to be on that wide outside line. Going to struggle to get the power down. John's definitely on the better, grippier part of the tarmac there, but hasn't really been able to make that run. Robin Noel Brown, I think, he's under pressure of Niels Culler, is he? Yes, he is, right up behind him at the moment. Let's ride on board with this for a moment and see how these two drivers differ as they head to the first couple of sectors.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see the battle between Kula and Noel Brown tonight generally. Niels Kula, of course, leading the championship. Noel Brown trying to play a little bit of catch-up, especially after both of their disappointing evenings last time out. Noel Brown, 27 points at Long Beach. Niels Kula, 51. Of course, drop rounds for both, but it means that Niels Kula has a little bit more to fall back on if it came down to it. The issue is, for the time being, if Noel Brown was to win, he'd already, of course, surpassed their 27 points and mean that tonight's race will count, and for Niels Kula, he'll get to 45 if he comes second in this race, and really he only needs to finish race number 2 of this evening to make sure that these points aren't dropped. But it does, however, mean that the pressure is slightly on for race 2, because even if they do all right, the points are going to have to count. They can't fall back on something better, so that'll be something that they have to consider in the back of their minds, I'm sure. But still, early stage of the season, not quite halfway through yet. I'm sure they'll feel like they have time to recover it with some of the races that we've got to go.
Here's Charlie Stothard carving his way through the field from the back of the grid. Got himself up past about 10 of the TCRs at the moment, and it's good news for Mr. Brooks, who we can see the 2 TCRs in behind him are in the Pro class. Then it's Matt Stace of the GT4s. Then it's his championship rival of Hales just coming in the picture there. So Brooks does have a nice margin, bearing in mind already into the final 4.5 minutes. He's going to convert this pole position as it stands. He's done well in the opening 10. He's only got 4 to go. Let's see if he can convert this one. All the while, Keith Calhoun and Anthony Hilton, albeit a little bit further down the order, kind of away from the top 5 in their own class. Lots of points on offer with only short numbers in each of these categories. Only about 10 drivers in each of these classes tonight, and that's a GT4 of Matt Stace, who's really going to get the pace on. Here, these two defending the inside line. Be very interesting to see how Matt Stace handles this one. He's going to have the pace, while those two bump draft each other through the corner.
Yeah, interesting tactic, there's no doubt about that, but it seems like they've got away with it somewhat. Matt Stace is just about, oh my word.
That was sideways.
That does get a little bit, yeah, it doesn't get particularly comfortable, does it? As they go under the bridge in towards the paddock. Stace will be down in 11th still as they continue onwards to start yet another lap. I think we're only going to have 2 more to go here. It depends on William Humphries, of course, but I don't think he'll be able to get round in time. As we see what happens again, this is Keith Calhoun. Well, I was going to say getting done around the outside, but then a slide, then a tap, and then a maintaining of position. It's all happening at the final turn.
That was pretty good car control, to be fair, by Keith. Very, very close on the entry. Would, of course, have lost some downforce and a bit blindsided as he heads into that corner. Late on the brakes is Brandy. Are they going to make contact? Yes, they are. Just about gets it slowed down, but Cheesby will hang on to that position. Both of these drivers currently in P6 in their respective classes. Francois not best pleased about that one as Cheesby closes the door on the pro driver trying to make his way through. Although Francois somewhat out of the order, he does have Josh Parra in behind him, 1.7 seconds to deal with. But even if he got past Cheesby, he'd have 5 more GT4 AM drivers to catch up with before he even reaches Thomas Pugh. Inside the top 5, Ben Smith is all over the back of Humphrey with only 2 minutes to go. We're only going to have another lap or 2 at most. Let's see if we have the white flag. I think there's a chance, that we do have the white flag on this lap. Let's look out for that marshal post, see if we can see him. But it's bent. Yeah, there it is. White flag already. This is the final lap. And it's all game on between these two drivers for pole position and for maximum points around the outside. Look, Smith. Humphries is going to defend at the inside line. The better run out of the corner. It's going to be tricky to get a move done as the track curves to the right-hand side. Is Smith going to think about it? No, he's going to have to pick his opportunity potentially into the hairpin. Let's see how the run down there goes.
Yeah, as they work their way towards turn number 6, going to be crucial to get a good run. I think it looks like William Humphries got just about enough of a kick in terms of his horsepower to make his way down into the hairpin without being pressured by Ben Smith in this, what do you say, like a beigey pink coloured car. The Lumen Flex team will be willing him on, I'm sure, around this final lap, but opportunities are now going to be thin and far between. It's all going off in the TCR Pro category with Hilton, Calhoun and Hayworth, but that's not quite for the lead of the race as it is here for Humphrey and Smith, and great to see these two battling it out once again as they have all season long.
Yeah, bit of an incident for Nevin Charney and Howarth as well, who've dropped down the order, so I think they may struggle to cross the line. Yeah, Nevin Charney really plummeting down the order, sadly. Marius Hibber is putting pressure, I think, on Yanis Aubert. Yes, he is. He could have one opportunity as well. We can see that battle in frame now. The two Glasstec cars leading 2 Porsches. Currently, it's 7 Porsches inside the top 7. Liam Fraser next in the Mercedes inside the top 8. Smith running out of opportunities here, and Humphrey only has 1 corner left to defend. It's all about the run down on the traction for Ben Smith. Has he got it? Let's ride on board. It doesn't look like he does. Humphries is pulling away ever so slightly. Going to be really tricky for Smith to make anything of this now. This may have to continue into the feature race, I think, Dara.
Luckily it will, with these two starting right at the front of the field, but for William Humphrey coming around the final corner, it's deja vu because, I mean, is this his, 9th win of the season? Incredible to start off the year.
Yeah, such a good performance, and what a way. Both of them will be very pleased with that competition over the line. Just a 10th, nearly 2/10 of a second separating those two, and Yanis Aubert finishes on the podium for the 3rd time so far this season. It's going to be Robin Noel Brown who pips Nils Culler to the line by over 1.5 seconds, and it will be Liam Fraser who rounds out the final step of the podium. The 1, 2, 3, not quite in championship order, but the top 3 in the championship finishing on the podium. Here comes the GT4 leaders, McKinley heading around the final corner.
Yeah, McKinley's done such a great job all through the season, and he's doing it yet again. He may be overtaken by a GT4, but that actually may help him at the start of race number 2 in the big picture, because he won't have to worry about them overtaking him at the start of the race. Then again, Jay Cooley will be right behind him, as will Jaden Scotland and Anthony Hilton. Good result for Jay Cooley. Great to see him getting onto the podium once again, this time in the TCR Pro category. Let's see if he can try and use this to push on in the championship.
Ashley Brooks does convert that victory, so well done, Ash. You've got there in the end after returning from some time out. Gordon Hales does what he can to bring home as many points as he could. Sarika Desler finished in P4. In the end, it was Martin Kenyon who took the final place on the podium. Rob Smith down there in P5, and I think Nevin Charney was sadly the only driver not to cross the line, and will therefore be one of the few not to score any points. But we'll bring you the race results very shortly indeed, ahead of the 5-minute warm-up, before we get ahead with the feature of the session, which again, as we've said, 45 minutes in finishing order. So definitely a chance for guys to pick up where they left off.
It's nice to have that kind of balance in terms of races between things like the 3 20-minute races with a reverse grid every single race, and something like this format with 50 minutes, setting a grid directly for the 45-minute race. Double points as well upcoming really is crucial to get as good of a position as you can. You can't really afford to lose too much time or spots, and you could find yourself in a bit of a bad position in terms of the points tonight.
Absolutely right. So then, speaking of points, let's run through them, shall we? So, William Humphrey, it's becoming a common thing to say, but he once again crosses the line first. This time, though, only a tenth of a second better off over Ben Smith, his championship rival. That will continue, I'm sure, for the rest of the evening. Yannis Aubert doing very well to get himself on the podium ahead of Marius Hibmer and Thomas Pugh. That'll be 5 Porsches, 6 Porsches, in fact, inside the top 5. Francois Brandet will be inside the top 6 with Jeff Hibbert and Laurens den Ouden in the top 8. It will be Jeremy Ulemans ahead of Joe Shapara and Mitchell Costas inside the top 11. All drivers scoring points and all drivers finishing on the lead lap.
Always love to see everybody scoring points. That's what what drivers come to do, and it's great to see that no one will be going home empty-handed in that class. In the GT4 AMS, I think it's a bit of the same story. Robin L. Brown winning the race by 1.6 seconds, not the biggest of margins, but he'll absolutely take it, and we'll start from the lead of the GT4 AM class when we get going in a couple of minutes' time. Liam Fraser rounded out the podium, but he had to hold off John Ludbrook in the end for what was a strong P3 for the 274. Edward Grove and Dean Cheeseby 5th and 6th, with Luke Bailey, Rob Gray, Klaas Fellon, Joseph Preston, and Joseph Preston, I should say, rounding out our top 10. Charlie Stoddard and Matt Stace just outside the top 10, and Daniel Paul 1 lap down, but I think he should pick up the points for that, even though he's the lap behind.
Yeah, as long as he crossed the line, then he will take home those points. Next up then, the TCR Pro Class, just 10 drivers in this one. First of all, crossing the line, it was Mr. Andrew McKinley, who is, of course, inside that championship fight, leading the way at the moment, so he brings home as many points as he can. So far, so good for the Scottish 152. Jay Coley will pick up the points for P2 ahead of Jaden Scotton, rounding out the podium. It'll be Anthony Hilton and Keith Calhoun in the top 5, with James Howarth and Scott Malcolm in the top 7. Logan McKenzie recovered after having to drive through the pit lane into the top 8, which is damage limitation, I think, there for the American. And then it's Kevin Marshall-Say and sadly Max Nevincharney, who I don't think took the checker and therefore may not bring home those points inside the top 10.
Will not be. That's a shame. We'll have to wait and see whether he gets the points, but yeah, it's not looking good for him for the time being. Finally, though, in the TCRM category, it's Ashley Brooks who took home the 50 points for the win for the 50-minute race. Gordon Hales, the South African championship leader, coming home in second place. We'll see if he can try and kick on from there in race number 2. We saw Martin Kenyon round out the podium ahead of Hussein Sarkar and Rob Smith, all of the top 5 within 10 seconds of the race winner. Jason Haddington and Andrew Fellows were not too far off in 6th and 7th, with Danny Weir, Steve Rubino and Dean Sargent rounding out our top 10 in a nicely compact grid, which should hopefully set us up well for race number 2 with 100 points on the line.
Yeah, just about a minute to go then until we reach that point. A handful of drivers out on the circuit. Mitchell Costa's one of the few BMW drivers, in fact, the only BMW driver in the session tonight. He's heading around through the first couple of sectors. A late addition into the championship, arrived at Long Beach this time last week. So far, so good for the driver, keeping himself out of trouble and, of course, getting himself around the circuit just to get familiar with perhaps different fuel loads going into these cars for what will be, of course, that longer session, Dara, and some strategy at play. As we said earlier, only the second time this season that these GT4 TCR drivers will have to serve a mandatory pit stop, which is always cool to see how that might influence the race results.
Definitely going to be interesting, I think, for teams and for mainly for drivers, but also for people like the engineers, for some of these drivers to try and work out where the best spot is to place the car and when to put themselves into the pit lane, change around the strategy, things like that. Definitely going to be key, no doubt about it. I am very much looking forward to seeing how some of these drivers are able to almost adapt from the sprint race to a slightly more extended race and see how this can change, or if it changes at all, how some of these drivers race off the start line and whether they're slightly more conservative or whether they're just as aggressive because it may have worked in race one.
Yeah, you're right. And I know the guys, well, the Glass Tech guys with me, Humphrey and Brandy and Yanis, will have Dale and probably Nick with them in the chat. And I think they're trialing something that that Dale's put together to try and calculate when it's best to come in terms of gaps further down the order to try and come out in free air. So interesting strategy at play for those lot. Let's see if it works. We might see those three drivers coming out in clean air if that call can be worked out correctly. But we have one formation lap ahead of us before we get underway. And Dara, you can run us through the grid for this final feature race of the evening.
I will quickly say on this that the top 5 that you see on your screen right now are the top 5 in the championship in the GT4 Pros. I think you mentioned that, Joe, and if you didn't, I may have misheard you slightly, but it's worth pointing out how impressive that is and how important that the battles right at the sharp end of the field are going to be in this race, with Humphrey Smith, Albert Hibmat and Thomas Pugh making up the top 5. Then comes Robin Noel Brown and Niels Kula, the top 2 in the GT4 AM categories. They start in 6th and 7th, quite elevated up the field. Fraser Lubrook and Edouard Grobe rounding out the top 10. It's 5 pros followed by the 6 AMs, and those 6 AMs rounded up by Dean Cheeseby. Francois Brande, a little bit in no man's land, ahead of Luke Bailey and Jeff Hibbert as they make up row number 7. Rob Gregg and Klaas Vellen, the German driver, Klaas Vellen wasn't quite 30 seconds behind the race winner of Humphrey in race 1 and will start in P16. Lawrence Denowden, Jeremy Ulemans, Joe Spara and Mitchell Costas are going to round out our top 20. That is all of the GT4 Pro drivers. We've still got just the one AM in the form of Joseph Preston to go through. Then we start to find ourselves in the midst of the TCRs. Andrew McKinley, Jake Hawley and Jaden Scott in 1, 2 and 3. Charlie Stottard will start in P25 in the GT4. Matt Stacey will be alongside him also in the GT4. Ashley Brooks and Anthony Hilton are on row 14 with Gordon Hales and Keith Calhoun making up row 15. Martin Kenyon, James Hayworth, Sir Sainz Arkadesla, Scott Malcolm are on row 16 and 17 with the top 40 rounded out by Rob Smith, Logan McKenzie, Kevin Marshall, Jason Haddington, Andrew Fellows and Danny Weir. Just a few more names to run through, not too many more. Steve Rubino, Dean Sargent, Max Nevinciani and GT4 Daniel Poole will round out the 44 drivers that will start race number 2. 45 minutes worth of action. It's going to be an important one with 100 points up for grabs for the winners of all 4 classes.
Absolutely, lots and lots of points on offer. Those guys will be more than aware of that, and I think I prefer when you have to kind of work for it in, again, it's not endurance, but in that slightly longer format, it makes sense that there's more points on offer in this kind of session. So we have we have some great battles up and down the grid, as you said. The top 5 in the championship, top 5 leading away that field, and it's also nice to see the likes of Culler and Noel Brown and even Grobe and Fraser right up there in the GT4 AM class. Not too many drivers out of position. What will be an interesting watch is watching on this man, Mr. Logan McKenzie, championship leader, but all the way down in P8 in class. And crucially, he has 5 drivers, in fact more. He has 2 of those GT4s as well. So he's got 7 or 8 drivers separating him from Mr. McKinley at the front of his class. Let's see if he can pick off any positions right toward the start, and really it's about as important of a race as he will have. He can't really afford to drop many more points after losing so many to the drop rounds, which Dara might be the most unfortunate drop round I've seen. It's not often that someone will drop maximum points. Usually it's meant to be one of your worst rounds, whereas sadly for him, he's going to end up having to drop a very, very successful round.
I guess what that means, though, is that if he has to keep... Well, there's no way that he doesn't win the championship if he has to drop that by the end of the year, surely. Because if he's not managed to get 100 points in every single week up to the end of the season, then he will be doing a pretty decent job, it's fair to say. But it does show how consistent some of these drivers can be, and how elevated that can put themselves up the championship, and how impressive it can be. So even if he doesn't quite get a decent enough result here to get himself over the 100-point threshold, that's what he's going to pick up tonight regardless.
Absolutely right then, as the drivers round the final corner. It's the second time tonight that we've said this, but William Humphrey will lead them over the line once again. We've got 45 minutes around the Sebring International Raceway, waiting for him to cross the line. He's done it now. We're going to be underway, and we have green flags once again. One of the Porsches there in the background coming out of shot quite aggressively, and two of those Porsches, Thomas Pugh up the inside of Marius Hibmer in behind. Yannis Aubert looks like he's gained a place up the inside of Ben Smith, which is great news for Humphrey, having his teammate right in behind him. That will help quite a bit. A couple of drivers dropping down the order. This battle will continue between Brandy, and that's contact. Is that Colour? No, Brown and Colour, both of the GT4 AM drivers off the circuit at turn 3. They're both plummeting down the order. Andrew McKinley and Jay Corley swapping places through that melee at the front of the TCRs.
Yeah, it really is a pretty dramatic start, to say the least, right at the front of the field. I think there's going to be a few drivers not overly pleased with how it started for them, but they're going to have a long time to try and recover this. In towards the hairpin we go, though. Andrew McKinley involved in all of this class. Velen up a little bit further up in one of the GT4 cars. Got to be careful, because here comes Mitchell Costas as well. There's Joe Spara that looks like he's into the mix in this battle. Really frantic start over the blend between the GT4s and the TCRs, with Costas up the inside. We'll get the move done into Cunningham Corner.
Yeah, Charlie Stothard looks like he's around and down the order. Sad for him, he made up such a good effort, made up so many good places off the start. Now he has to painfully sit there as the traffic flows on by. McKinley's gained one place in class off the start. Jay Corley right in there behind him, and he's got Ashley Brooks for company, who's doing quite well at the moment. He's miles ahead of Martin Kenyon, about 10 cars in between Brooks and Kenyon off the line. Ashley's made up 5 places off the start. Noel Brown is in P26, having dropped down the order, but Nils Culler and Gordon Hales are both in the pit lane. 2 men leading their respective championships. The night's over already.
Yeah, very much frantic, isn't it? Off the start line. I think this is going to be one that we have to really keep tabs with, because a lot of these drivers are going to be clamouring over some of these positions, no doubt about that. With lots of points at stake, with 43 minutes still left on the clock. End of the opening lap, though. Hibmer and Ben Smith are fighting. Smith has been, he's dropped down the order a couple of spots. Bear was able to get past him. And now Hibmer in the 3-3-3, looking to try and go all the way around the outside. Not going to work out this time. Ben Smith will stay exactly where he is. But Thomas Pugh may have a look as well, as Hibmer has to turn attack into defence. Yeah,
I'm trying to find that contact between the two GT4 AM leaders. We'll come back to that shortly, see if we can see what happened. Apparently Rob's saying that Noel Brown went around the outside and sadly collected Culler on the way, so maybe no fault of his own. At the front though, it's William Humphrey, who's had a great start to the race, and he'll be comfortable in knowing that he's got his teammate for company in behind him. No threat, I'm sure, in behind at the moment. It's now up to whether these guys can extend that margin. Something would tell me the pace that we've seen from Humphrey so far, not only this season, not only tonight, but also throughout the entire season, he would probably look to get away and have a nice little free stop at some point during the session. Further down the order, Klaas Velen and Jeremy Ullerman's battling out of the class. There's the McLaren of Rob Gregg ahead. Let's ride on board with this McLaren, which we haven't done an awful lot of so far this season. He's in the top 6, and obviously those two leaders heading off the circuit has really opened the door in this double point feature race, as we keep saying. Fraser, Ludbrook, Grove, Sheesby as well, in with a chance at some great points. Still a long way to go, 40 minutes But with both of those guys looking out and down the order, Noel Brown, there or thereabouts, only 4 or 5 seconds off the back of that top 5 pack, so I'm sure he could claw back some of that time, but it's looking so far so good for those top 3 or 4 in that AM class.
Yeah, it's definitely looking a bit close. I think we will see a bit of a gapping out of some of these teams and drivers. Teams, I keep thinking about teams, don't I? Gapping out of some of these drivers, but for the time being, I think drivers are still trying to get themselves into a position that they feel comfortable enough to get themselves stuck into a rhythm. Of course, with the pit stops that drivers will have to be thinking about at some stage in this race, they are going to have to be thinking about fuel numbers, little bits of strategy like that they otherwise won't be thinking about for 90% of the season. But now you're having to battle side by side and towards turn 1, as Klaus Velen is doing, and think about things like your fuel number, your tyres as well. It's going to be a tricky one, no doubt about that, but they're still going frantically at it. Outside line for Velen. Oh, bit of a good, well, it was a good run around the outside for a second. Wasn't able to really get it done on Rob Gregg, who was just able to hold the inside line to his advantage. And McLaren 225, the only McLaren in the top 20 in the GT4s, holds strong and stays in P6 in the AM class.
Yeah, it was a good check-up. Well, sorry, not a good check-up. The Porsche on the inside there did have to check up at Sunset Bend. Let's see what happened here with Nils Kuller. Ah, so unfortunate. You can see there, Noel Brown just left the circuit momentarily, got up on the grass, and then Kuller was just a passenger and all that. It's deep initially, it oversteers, gets up on the grass, and then the rest is a passenger. Both drivers a passenger in that incident. I'm sure Robin would feel particularly bad, let's say, about it being his championship rival who he ended up taking with him. Unfortunate for both of them, and even more unfortunate, Kuller is back on the track, but he's a lap down. As long as he crosses the checkered flag, he'll still score some points with the amount of drivers that we have tonight. But yeah, really, really unfortunate one for both of those. Dean Schiesby under pressure from Francois Brandet. We saw this battle commencing throughout the entirety of that first race. It's going to continue here. Francois looking to get ahead and around the outside. Schiesby is going to fight this one. Doesn't fancy holding on to that P4. Is he going to send it up the inside here? Yes, he is. And he's got his nose ahead. That's very deep, though, by Schiesby. And just about stays in front of... That's Rob Gregg around at the final corner. He's got it stopped. I wonder if that's contact or if he's just spun of his own accord. But, yeah, it's Schiesby putting up one hell of a fight here. Out of class with Brandet, who's trying to get past to try and gain on the back of the top 5 in his class.
Yeah, Brandet, he's had a difficult start to the season, no doubt about that. Really has had a rough time of it, but getting himself towards the top 5 in class would be, I think, a little bit of a bonus for him. He started the season, he has started the season with 2 top 5s in the first 9 races. 2 top 10s in the first 9 races. Looking for his first top 5 tonight. Could put himself into, the range of P11, P12 in the championship. Still a bit of a long way off after missing a couple of rounds, but and he's here. We know what quality he can have. He showed it in the opening series season of the GT4s, and he's showing it a little bit now. The only worry is he has to be careful not to let through some of these GT4 AMs.
Yeah, he's got Jeremy Ullemans right behind him, so he's got to worry about his points in class as well. It was a bit of a late move on Schiesby up the inside, who's doing... well, some fine defensive work, I guess you could say. Contact nearly sent Schiesby into a spin. Managed to scoop it up, though. Keep it facing in the right direction. But Francois has somewhat invited pressure in behind. Although Spar has dropped off ever so slightly. It's gone from a 2-car battle to a 3-car battle. And, of course, with Ullemans being in Francois' class, these two are now really going for it. Schiesby, the gap ahead is 5.5 seconds now. It would almost serve Schiesby better in the long run if he didn't have these two all up in his gearbox, putting him under pressure. But for the time being, that's what these guys have to deal with. And let's see how the pace differs in the final sector between Ullemans and Brandet, of course. The 5 cars in this battle, all in the Porsche, as you might come to expect. But Francois, I'm sure, will be keen to get this move done. He's already had a couple of stabs at it. Hasn't been able to get it done in the opening 3.5 laps. Very wide entry by Ullemans, looking to get a good run. You might do, because Francois ran wide off the circuit. I think Ullemans is going to be passed before they reach the braking zone at Sunset.
Yeah, let's see. Can he get it done? I think he will, quite easily. And yes, Ulemans will be up into P6, and he can now start to chase after Thomas Pugh and maybe even the likes of Hipmer and Ben Smith as well. Through the final corner, they will come, and Ulemans looking for a slightly later apex, and you can see how that works out for him. Just going a little bit deeper into the corner and shortening off at the apex can give him a much better run towards turn 1. And it'll give him the extra couple of hundredths that he will so desire. Through the final corner, we will look with Keith Calhoun as we run with the American underneath the bridge, and he won't quite be able to be close enough to make a move on Anthony Hilton, I wouldn't think, but he's going to be close enough to apply some pressure, and that's what you can really do at this stage of the race.
Robin Noel Brown in the pit lane then. I'm not sure if that is incident related or if he's taking his stop nice and early. Nothing on the timing tower to suggest that he's had an off track or an incident. Let's just see as the championship rival enters into his pit box then. That seemed like it was an awfully quick stop. Not long enough, surely. Did he have a stay? Yes, he did. Okay, he was in the pit for 15 seconds. So that is him serving his pit stop already. Comes out in some nice clean air. He's got gaps in front and behind. So yeah, chance now for Noel Brown to really put his foot down and try and get that cut over the drivers later on in the race. He's done all of his strategy. It's flat out racing for the next 35 minutes for the man who's trying to overtake Colour in that championship order.
Ooh, as we see up in
close.
the GT4s, Brande getting very, very close with Joe Sparrow as they make their way out of Tower Turn. I was going to say very quickly that Ashley Brooks, by winning the TCR category, has become the only 12th class winner so far this season in the 10th race, which is absolutely crazy when you think about it. With only 12 winners, I mean, there's technically 40 classes, and there's only been 12 winners in those 40 races. Incredible. Some consistency from some drivers has been a joy to watch. Joe Sparrow, though, he is still fighting with the likes of Jeff Hibbard and Francois Brandet. The Constantina effect at Tower Turn has meant that it's getting pretty close at this part of the circuit, and Charlie Stoddard working his way up from the back of the field is going to be no different as they work their way through the Le Mans chicane.
Yeah, it'll be good news for Charlie very shortly. He's only got 4 TCRs to get through, and then it will be plain sailing up to the back of the GT4 pack. And as you can see in a straight line, it's quite a difference, and he'll be up the inside of Mr. Jaden Scotton by the time they reach the turning point. This battle, though, really continuing. We saw Sparrow getting pushed wide off the circuit. That's very wide there by, I'm not sure who that is. That's Laurent Auden, I think. 3 wide there by the 3 Mercedes. It's Sparrow leading, Hibbert leading, Velen in behind. This is slightly out of class, actually. It's P8 in the Pro class, P6 in the M class, P9 and P7 all across the 2 GT4 classes. So you like to see it, but let's hope that they don't, slow each other down too much. That BMW of Mitchell Costa's certainly thinking about it while he watches these guys do battle ahead. For Mercedes, what a sight that is. And the BMW in a straight line will get past these guys. He'll lose out in the corners a little bit, but he could fancy his run down towards Sunset at the end of this lap.
Yeah, I think a lot of the drivers are going to be looking at Sunset now as a good spot to make a move. Sunset, turn 1, turn 6, maybe Cunningham corner as well. They're the prime overtaking spots on the racetrack. We are down at Cunningham now. And then, of course, down at Tower Turn, this right hand, you may be able to fling it up the inside if you're feeling very brave, but it can go very wrong. And we see that time and time again. Mitchell Costa stays where he is for the time being, though, in P18 overall. So we have a full look at the entire tower. Interesting that we've got just the 1 BMW and the 1 McLaren in the entire field, and somehow they're 18th and 19th overall, Joe.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of what we saw last week in the GT3s, where we had those 3 Mustangs starting next to each other and racing on with each other. Quite strange how that all works out. But, he's kept it nice and tight to the apex there, the BMW. That is going to give him the run that he needs to potentially launch a move on Alanis and Auden into Sunset Bend. Let's see, though. He might not be one to send it late on the brakes. He hasn't quite, he hasn't got any overlap. He's nowhere near getting himself alongside. Gets early on the brakes. That could bode him well on the exit. Gets it tight to this inside curve. If he, don't want to get it too tight, but he's going to get his foot down nice and early here. That could be a great launch. Yes, it is. He's in a better position now than he was coming out of turn 16. That's right on board. He's going to be forced around the long way by the Mercedes. Quite similar looking liveries there. Are they in the same? Yes, they are. Teammates battling into turn 1. I'm sure they'll keep it safe between one another. What I was going to highlight at the front, though, the top 6 or top 7 even in the field overall, massive gaps between them, over a second separating each of them. Humphrey and Albert somewhat checking out of the race, not fully, but they're definitely in their own little space on the circuit under no pressure from one another. Dean Sheesby and Francois Brandet, though, still doing battle here, and it makes you wonder, this is, well, this could extend. Something would have told me that Francois would have been able to get past by now, but he's still stuck in behind that driver.
Yeah, not a place where you exactly want to be finding yourself. Little bit in a position where it's going to be difficult to get towards the likes of Jeremy Ulemans or keep tabs with Ulemans if he's not able to get through on Sheesby quickly. And Sheesby is absolutely not going to give this one up without a fight. They'll work their way towards Tower Turn, and Sheesby is more than enough of an advantage over Francois Brandet to keep himself safe down into Tower Turn. Luke Bailey is close to the back of this one as well and absolutely mounts that curb on the inside, nearly goes flying, but will stay where he is. This is a tight little battle, but for Brandet, he can't really afford at all to stay here because that gap up to Jeremy Ulemans is now nearing 3.5 seconds, and with every passing corner it feels like it's increasing just about another 100th or two.
Yeah, it's really, really tight, these margins between these guys. Just want to flash up Robin Noel Brown, who, as we saw, made that early pit stop at the moment, making his way through that through that TCR traffic. Next driver ahead is Sadek Adesla. Then he's got a 5-second gap to Kenyon, so he is going to pick them off one by one. No one is too close, apart from Scott and Brooks, Hilton and Calhoun, which are 3 cars up the road. So at some point, Noel Brown is likely to get himself caught up in some of those battles. That's this pack, with Scotton ahead of Brooks. Brooks leading the way, of course, in the GT4 AM class. Let's bring back up the interclass order. He has got 3 pros ahead, 3 pros behind, down to Martin Kenyon. So at the moment, Brooks just wants to sit pretty, stay where he is. Maybe not. Looks to the inside, comes back over to the racing line. He's got the Audi thinking about potentially up the inside, but they all back out of that one. And Brooks might fancy his chances, to be fair. These guys are racers at the end of the day. Maybe some people don't look too much into the classes, but of course, in the lead of the race, on for maximum points, Brooks has to be cautious here, not to be overly optimistic when he could just sit back. But if he knows he's quicker and he's got a little bit of a gap ahead, he might fancy his chances at really trying to turn the screw and get ahead, stay ahead of the likes of Kenyon and Sarah Kadesla, who are just coming around the final corner, coming around turn 1 in a moment.
Yeah, for Jaden Scotland, this isn't a bad position to be in the 186 because having a decent enough season is Scotland in his Hyundai as they run their way around towards turn 6, and I'm sure he would absolutely love to stay where he is. P3 overall in the standings. He's had 3 second places and 3 third places so far this season, including the race that we've just seen in the 15 minutes not too long ago. If he's able to beat Logan McKinsey in this race, no matter where he finishes, he will leapfrog him into second place in the championship. So this is looking pretty good for him at this stage of the race. Having said that, though, I haven't factored in the fact that Logan McKinsey is likely to pick up 100 points from this round, rather than the around 60 that he's on for the time being. So there's that we have to work into these as well, isn't there?
Yeah, difficult to predict. Sometimes it makes you wonder whether it's even worth it, but yeah, we'll always get the standings a couple of days after the championships, after the round's finished, and then we can get a proper view over how things stand. At the moment, though, you've got to do what you've got to do to bring home the points, and at the moment, it's Humphrey, Fraser, McKinley and Brooks who are in prime position to bring home their 100 points in their respective classes. We've just crossed over into the second third of this race, just under half an hour left to go, and we'll soon be seeing some drivers heading into the pit lane. We've already seen Noel Brown do that quite early doors. Humphrey 2.5 seconds clear now of Yannis Olber, so no need for him to be too worried about losing time or gaining positions. However, someone who might be wise to have a little early pit stop is Mr. Francois Brandet at the moment, because he, I'm sure, is losing time to Sheesby as it stands. He's been right inside his gearbox since the second lap of the race. We're now on lap 8. 6 laps behind the same car. You might want to dive into the pit lane, see if you can get by, but he might get by around the outside of the hairpin. That will be an optimistic move. He can get that one stuck, which he can't, but he's got the switchback, and now he's going to be on the inside momentarily, but I believe it will become the outside line into... Oh, he's got the move done. There you go. Doesn't need to pit early because Francois is finally up, comes over to the right-hand side to defend, and I think you'd like to think that that will be the GlassTech DXT driver through clean into free air, and he's got 5 seconds worth of a gap ahead to Ullman's, the next car on track, to try and stretch his elbows a little bit.
You've got to be careful there because he's not being given the easiest time after making that move. He's got to try and get away by an extra few tenths just to make it feel a little bit safer and that he's not under too much pressure. But for Brande at the moment, still a lot of time in the back pocket to try and make moves up the field, pit stops as well to be thinking about. For the time being, he's done what he's needed to do in the last minute or two in the short term, that is, and he's now got to try and pull that gap in between himself and the 315 of Jeremy Ulemans. William Humphrey all the time going fastest at the front, 2:08.5. That's 7 tenths faster than Yannis Ulber on that last lap alone, and that gap suddenly is up to 3 seconds.
Yeah, and it's 3 tenths quicker than Yannis's best lap of the session. So as you say, 7 on that last, 3 overall. So Will definitely has the pace, and I'm not sure if Yannis has made a mistake on that lap to bring that extra 4 tenths of a margin, because he's got Ben Smith now within just about half a second of him, and he'll be fancying his chances here. We saw Ben Smith's qualifying pace was right up there as well, pretty close to Humphrey, more or less. Started, of course, ahead of Ulber, and one more mistake by Yannis could really allow Ben Smith to pounce on it, and we could see a battle for P2 at the moment, though. As we said, Humphrey will have been pleased that it was his teammate in behind him, because he's had no pressure at the start of the race into, as we say, into the second third. That 3-second gap is a nice one to have to manage. Not too much going his way at the moment, though, for Ben Smith. Just has to stay on the back and hope that Yannis makes a mistake. We've got a couple of drivers in the pit lane. Jaden Scotton and Anthony Hilton have decided to take their stop. That promotes Sarika Desler up momentarily. Josh Sparrow is going to be the next driver on the back of Shisby, and Francois has not got away. As he said, Dara, he's still under pressure from Shisby. Let's give it a couple of laps, see how the clean air goes, but perhaps these two will have similar pace for the rest of the night.
Yeah, we can work off each other in a way that's slightly beneficial rather than fighting. They may be able to work off each other a touch and be able to give each other a toe in the next few laps, keep each other's pace relatively up as we go through. It's always good to have a bit of a mate running through this kind of a stage of the race, if nothing else to try and judge pace off and be able to work with to try and benefit your cause. It was difficult if you're running around on your own to try and gauge where other drivers are around the circuit, how fast they're going. So it's nice to have a buddy in these circumstances. Drew Sparrow wouldn't mind getting through, though, and I think that's going to be a consideration in the 3-1-1's head. He may even go for it down at Sunset Bend. Tricky to see if he can make it there, but he will not be doing so. You can tell that we're in the morning in Sim, can't you? Because the sun does set on the exit of the final corner, and the sun's very much up in the sky towards turn 1 rather than the final turn.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good conditions for some racing, that's for sure. Glad that it's meant to be dry, of course. This was theoretically, well, it could have been a mixed condition race had we not changed that idea. So it would have been a completely different dynamic to see these drivers trying to go around such a tricky circuit with, of course, a bit of grass on the outside, which makes it a whole alley when it comes to driving in the rain. Shisby, though, under a little bit of pressure, made a slight mistake on the apex through the first corner, and again there, that's going to allow Sparrow the run in toward the hairpin. Is he going to defend the inside line? Yes, he does. Straight over to the right hand side for the 252, and Sparrow all the while watching Francois kind of get away up the road slightly. He will also know that he can't afford to sit here for too much longer. Then Ashley Brooks, Dean Poole, Keith Calhoun, next drivers into the pit lane. That's a handful, about 15 or so of the field who've come in to make that stop. Noel Brown, again, will be pleased to know now that he only has 2 cars left to pass before he's back in GT4 territory. Currently P10 in his class, and again, you can see Nils Culler in P13, so it will be points gained for Noel Brown on this occasion, even if he's not bringing home that many.
I think for a lot of drivers, now that drop rounds are being applied, there's always that fallback. Well, I say always that fallback. If drivers have been able to drop a round up to this point, there is the fallback. For some drivers, of course, they will not have attended a race, may have had a double DNF in the case of Yannis Albert, and therefore be in a position where they are actually having to, use every point they earn throughout the rest of the season in their championship tally. There is no room for dropping any kind of points. For some other drivers, the likes of Ben Smith, the likes of William Humphrey, if all goes Pete Tong all of a sudden, there is always that fallback clause for them. And that's what I like somewhat about having drop rounds in a season, not least because you're able to, maybe go out one evening of the season, miss a race and enjoy your night and not lose out anything in the grand scheme of things. But also because it means that it keeps the championship interesting, and it makes the maths a little bit interesting as well in terms of championship points. It means that drivers can almost try and fall back on some points, depend on others, and know that they can take extra risks because they may have a decent amount of points to fall back on towards the end of the year.
Precisely that, yeah. If you can keep your championship going, of course, it does leave, we are a sim racing community at the end of the day. Real life sometimes has to take precedence, which I think is definitely a factor when we consider these drop rounds. Some people will not be able to attend every round. I think that's an assumption, and therefore allowing those guys to claw back some of those points does keep the championship alive somewhat. But equally, if you are someone who will put this first and who will attend every single round of the championship, and if you can keep hauling in those points, you know that at some point you can afford yourself to maybe skip a round or to have an off night, because you end up bringing back a few extra points. If you can get all the way toward the end of the championship having scored highly, then you know that you can make a few extra risks and it won't really cost you all that much. Of course, that's something that all these drivers will be calculating as we get closer and closer to those kind of last 2 or 3 rounds when things really start to heat up. But for the time being, we just got to keep going, stick it in the championship halfway through the season now, and they don't want to risk too much. Speaking of risking too much, Joe Sparrow has got past Dean Sheesby, and now he can set off to Branday. And all the while, as we keep saying, Branday hasn't really been able to get up the road as much as we might have thought. It looked like the pressure that he was mounting on Sheesby, you might have really thought he would have had some significant pace over him, but Sparrow there, wow, that's a big power slide out the final corner. High risk here, it seems, for Sparrow, who's leaving absolutely nothing on the table in his pursuit of Francois ahead.
And Francois really coming under some pressure that I think will make him feel a little bit uncomfortable as they make their way into the final corner once again. Time ticking away nearly to the two-thirds stage in this race. Goodness, I can't get my words out tonight. It's not good, is it? Sparrow, though, will be looking to try and work his way through. Let's see if he's got a bit of a sweet move on the way as he makes his way in towards turn 1. Nothing going this time around, but the JSD racing car will be right on the tail of Branday, and it's just going to be almost harassment for the 328 right now.
Yeah, it's really just about trying to get yourself into that pit window without making too many errors. You don't want to do too much at the moment. Things could change, of course. Drivers going, oh, that's going to be an X. Won't be a slowdown or anything, but that's going to really, really hamper Sparrow's run down toward the hairpin. And yeah, as I say, we've seen occasions in the past where some drivers can make up a handful of seconds on others in the pit lane, so you never know. It could favour Branday, but it also could favour Sparrow. If he goes in right behind that Porsche, he could quite easily come out in front if he gets his fuel just on the limit, of course. Depending on how aggressive some of these drivers are, they might be saving fuel. They might not need to fill up the tank as much, which can claw you back, even if it's half a second or more. It can claw you back some time in that pit stop. All of those marginal changes that matter when you're doing endurance races. Can you lift in certain corners, and can you then achieve the same lap time, perhaps? The master of lifting coast, of course, is very difficult to do. But yes, some guys could be employing those tactics in this race for all we know, and that could really save them some effort when it comes to filling up the cars in the pit stop. Though no one at the moment inside the top 16 has come into the pit lane. It's only Ullermans, No Brown, Costas, Greg and Hibbert in the GT4 class who've served their stop already.
Yeah, so not too many, a lot that we are expecting down pit road in the coming 15 minutes or so. I think we'd probably expect them to see them in the next 5-6 minutes really. I can't see many drivers coming in the final couple of laps, but that may be where we find ourselves. Lots of drivers that I think are going to be looking at how long their pit stop is going to take, thanks to the fuel number, and that could be a crucial deciding factor in this race. Lots of drivers near the front ends of the orders definitely going to be thinking about that, and maybe have been saving fuel accordingly. Make sure that they won't be finding themselves running a little bit longer in the pit lane, because losing 2 seconds could be crucial, especially if if you are like Francois Brandet and has been defending for so long in this race. If you lose 2 seconds because you've used up a little bit more fuel and have to put more in the car, then all that hard work's really going to be for nothing, because you're going to get done in the pit lane.
Yeah, we've got the drivers now in the pit lane. Here's Sparrow making his way out of his pit box. He will rejoin the circuit before we know it. Shisby in behind him as well. And look at the margin. Shisby was right behind him. That's what we said, right behind him, heading into the pit lane. And the gap there then is 4 seconds difference between Sparrow and Shisby in the pit box alone. Never mind how well you execute the entry and the exit. So that's exactly what we're talking about. Something there in the fuel. Sparrow far more confident than Shisby is to really push it to the limits and know exactly how much fuel you're going to need to complete the next 15 minutes of racing. 2/3 of the race complete. Still though, we'll look for the leaders. Let's run right on board with Humphrey now, and let's see, is it time for him to come into the box? He's taking a wide line on the brakes quite late. Is that him wanting to tuck his car into the apex? Is he going one more time? Yes, he is. He will continue on as he crosses over onto lap 14 with 14 minutes to go here.
Yeah, not long left in this race. I mean, not many laps considering how long this circuit is in total in a 45-minute race. But really now running out of opportunities. Less time than we had in the sprint race left to run, but lots of pit stops that are going to be ongoing. Ben Smith coming in a little bit earlier may not bode too well for him. May have to spend a little bit more time stopped in the box and putting some fuel into the car. The longer you can go, by virtue the longer, or the less time you spend in the pit lane, because there's less fuel you have to put in the car to get yourself to the end, you know. So Ben Smith may be at a slight disadvantage to the likes of Albert and Hidmer and Humphrey, but for the time being, William looks imperious as always, and he's looking for what will be his 10th win of the season and his 9th in a row if he's to convert this.
15.7 stationary for Smith in the pit lane. So let's see how that compares to Yannis Albert when they get around. And again, something will tell me that these two at the front will be nearing that. Like you said, Dara, you wouldn't really want to go into the final 5 laps of the race having not been in the pit lane, of course, but no risk of any full course yellows or anything like that to influence the strategy. So it's all good. You can keep running really until you feel comfortable. A little bit of traffic here for Humphrey to have to deal with. That's Nils Culler in the on the inside line. Of course, I think that's is that Jay Corley perhaps? Yes, it is Jay Corley, who's getting by there in that Honda. And again, once you start lapping this traffic, it can really start to hinder those lap times. It'll be interesting, as I said at the start of the race, if Williams' engineer is giving him that information, they might be trying to pit themselves into a gap. I think it'll be pretty tricky to do with the field so spread at the moment. But again, I wanted to ride on board for the lap with Humphrey to see if he's going to come in. And Yannis is 4 seconds, 3.5 seconds off the back. So we have a little bit of time to see if those guys go for a switch strategy perhaps. Another lap it's going to be for Humphrey.
Yeah, got to get past Niels Kula as well. Kula, after the incident towards the start with Robin L. Brown, not really able to recover too much since, and by virtue of finishing they will not drop this round. But again, not as many points as could have been won by two of the GT4 leading contenders are going to be won. Liam Fraser, again, looks like he's going to be gaining some points. P5 for him. Don't also count out the likes of Luke Bailey. P2 in this race will be gaining points. The likes of Ludborough, Cluffell and Dean Shrewsbury, they're a little bit too far back for the time being. But definitely a tightening of the championship in the GT4 something we're going to have to keep an eye on all the way through the rest of the year. As I think we're finally going to see, is that Brandet coming into pit lane? It is Brandet coming into pit lane. And where's he going to come out in relation to Ulemans, who of course pitted slightly earlier than him?
I'm thinking about Albert. Here he is, Albert. We can see that pink Porsche. That's Ben Smith in behind. He is going to carry a little bit more speed than what Yannis is able to do on the exit, but it looks as though he's gained again. Let's compare those pit times. It was 1.2 seconds gained by Allbear in that pit box window, pit box time. So again, that's him further up the order at the moment. 2.5 seconds. It was about a second, I think, just before Smith came into the pit lane. He was definitely closing in on him over those last 5 laps or so. However, that margin has now been extended, and of course, as we predicted, it will be William who just about, not quite, but he's very close to that free stop as things stand at the moment. All depends on how long it takes him in the pit box. And every lap that cycles around, Dara, I think, is it going to be this one? Is it going to be this one? We'll have to wait and see. He's coming around Le Mans chicane now. So let's see if William pops into the pit lane and we can compare how he gets on to some of those drivers around him. Sadly, not too much action going on at the moment. We've got Noel Brown, who, wow, fair play to Robin, actually. He's recovered all the way up to P5, which we saw that early pit stop, but a good return, especially Nils Kuller, sadly, nowhere to be seen on those standings.
Yeah, it's a very difficult day for Niels Kuller. Again, not many points that are going to be won by him in the last 2 weeks. Aren't going to garner too much in terms of that points tally. So we'll have to see how he can try and gain a little bit of that confidence back as we go to next week at COTA, where you're going to need it. 3 20-minute races, going to be fast, going to be furious, lots of points up for grabs as well. Humphrey, though, he's had a bit of a sedate evening, had a nice, comfortable drive up to this point. We always have an hour's worth of racing, and he's had the first 50 minutes of this evening led, or sitting in the lead of the race. A little bit of trouble in the opening race with Ben Smith right on his tail, but he's had no such problems in this race. The only issue could be if Yannis Albert gains a little bit too much on him, but you can just about see him in the background crossing the start-finish line, and William Humphrey will have more than enough of a gap as he emerges out of the pit lane.
Yeah, we can see the pit times on screen now. He's gained, well, sorry, he lost just ever so slightly out to Yannis, but he has gained a second over Ben Smith. And a shout out to Klaas Vellen, who, is he on screen? Yes, he is. A 13.6 stationary stop for Klaas, which is the fastest in the field by some margin, of course. Some of those guys in the 16s, 17s and 18s, but somehow the Mercedes driver 217 got it done in 13.6, so a pretty good effort by him, putting minimal fuel into that Mercedes. Let's hope it gets him to the line and he hasn't accidentally underfueled, which we have seen. I mean, I've done it before. Plenty of drivers have done it before. Fingers crossed that's not the case on this occasion. The Mercedes of Jeff Hibbert trying to get past Rob Gregg, which is of course a battle out of class. Aside from that, though, there's not too much going on. Sparrow and Brandet looks like they're the only battle that we'll have in class for the culmination of this race, with just under 9 minutes to go.
Yeah, it really is crunch time. Only about a handful of laps left to Ryan Brandet now having to fight with Sparrow, who was able to do a good job in the pit lane. Now, here comes a bit of a send from Robin Noel Brown, trying to run his way back through the field after his problems early on with Niels Kuller. Noel Brown trying to take the championship lead this evening. Oh, he's going to get forced off the road. He's into the wall. And Robin Noel Brown, how much damage is there? Contact with Francois Brandet. And that didn't look too good out of the hairpin.
No, I'm not really sure if that was like the netcode style glue, or if they just got a little bit too close together. It looked as though he got himself alongside, did Noel Brown at the apex of the hairpin, and I'm not sure if the room was really left on the outside. I don't see it on the timing sheet, so I can't really go back to take a look at that. But Noel Brown, that might just be a message for him at the moment. Stay where you are, because he's got such a big gap to Edouard Grobe on the podium. It might not be worth risking any more damage with these GT4 Pro drivers at the moment, except the top 5. Sorry, well, yeah, top 4, actually, for Noel Brown. Cut your losses and stay put. He certainly didn't fancy that going into the hairpin, but he might not have a choice now. As we say, laps ticking down, time ticking down, and that front right of that Porsche, seen better days, probably won't feel as good as it has for the whole duration of the race so far.
Yeah, of course, drivers having to almost wrestle their cars now through the final few laps. It's very rare that we see drivers having to use their machines for this long in a single session. Of course, only 3 races we'll have that are 45 minutes long over the course of the season. We'll have 10 that are 10 races that are 30 minutes. We'll have 9 races that are 20 minutes, but only 3 that are 15 and 3 that are 45. So definitely a balance that the drivers are going to have to face, and they are doing that for the time being. Difficulty is we're seeing some drivers having a bit of a drop-off in terms of the pace, and nonetheless, here than this battle involving Max Nevin Chani, although that is a GT4 coming through. The pace advantage is slightly skewed, as it's not actually going to be as severe as it did look like, because a pace advantage is quite clear between the GT4s and the TCRs on acceleration, such as we saw out of the hairpin.
Yeah, Steve Rubino out of class with Max Devinciani ahead. Steve in the top 5 at the moment of the TCR AM class. And a note there, I think Francois Brandet has come into the pit lane possibly to serve a drive-through, maybe, because he's dropped down to P17 on the road, P10 in class. So I'm not sure if that contact with Noel Brown was enough to send him over the 17x limit. I think it is. We've seen him with a few bumps and scrapes with Shispi a little bit earlier on, and you think a couple of 4x's and before you know it, you're going to cross over that 17-point threshold. So not the best display, sadly, for Francois, but still top 10. Decent points on offer. And in terms of the team's championship, which I think, given Francois's unfortunate start, should we say, to the championship, I think the teams is where they need to put the focus. And with William Humphrey and Yannis Aubert scoring points good enough for P1 and P2 at the moment, I don't think he'll mind all that much.
And of course, I think the team as a whole are going to be pleased with how the season has started generally. Of course, a couple of weeks it hasn't gone particularly their way, but with the amount of points that are just getting racked up at the moment by the ever brilliant William Humphrey, it's looking pretty difficult for others to try and catch, especially when you're thinking that the likes of Aubert and Brandy are able to supplement those points with some of their own, and another 90 look like they're heading their way for the team here with Aubert and 100 for William Humphrey. So really good night, no doubt about it, for the team. Ben Smith trying to upset the party somewhat, only 2 seconds off Yannis Aubert, but there's only going to be 3 more laps left, if that, in this race. So not long left for these drivers to really get their act together and try and make these moves work.
Yeah, confirming there that Francois had the black flag before that contact with Robin, so he's teetering potentially on that disqualification amount, so he's really got to keep it on the circuit for the next 4 minutes and 20 seconds. But yeah, just catching up with these guys. This battle's gone on for most of the race, actually, out of class. Sadly, it's Ludbrook leading Fraser, which I was just about to check that before I got distracted. Has John won a race this season? No, he has not. He's had 2 podiums right at the start in the first race and then in the second round the following week. At the moment, though, right up there, doesn't want it. Well, I say that, and as I say that, he gets passed by Liam Fraser. I wasn't looking at the right screen there. Let's see how Liam got that one done, shall we? Was it a mistake?
Let's have a look at the replays, and here is Fraser by John Ludbrook. He's offline. He's made that error out of Cunningham corner. And Liam Fraser says thank you very much. One of the easier passes he's going to make this evening, and at an incredibly important point, considering there's only going to be another couple of laps when they cross the line. Great to see the battle for the win. Looks like it will come down to the final lap, with Ludbrook pushing him all the way to try and regain those 10 points for the win. Or 10 extra points, I should say, for the win.
Yeah, that's unfortunate for Ludbrook. Apologies once again. Commentary seems to do these guys no favours. I said the same thing last week and that went wrong for somebody, so maybe it's best if I don't. But yeah, sadly, he's got to deal with this cluster of this TCR cluster that he's got to get through. And then Erlemans has got through as well in the Pro Class, which is someone who will he want to influence the race win potentially between these AM drivers. Looks like he's going to stay put. Is Ludbrook going to think about a move? It's 3 wide nearly, and there's contact. Erlemans is round, gets a help. Sad for John there. He had lots of room to go around the outside, but didn't react quick enough. And that will be his chances at a race win, all said and done. Luke Bailey and Dean Shispi continuing this battle. Robin O'Brown is the car ahead, clinging on to 4th at the moment. Anything could change, actually. 2.5 minutes to go. There'll only be this lap or 1 more to go. And yeah, these guys, 4, 5 and 6 in class, sharing the same piece of tarmac. Plenty of opportunities for these 3 to try and bring home some last gasp points, which of course in this format will mean quite a bit in the championship picture.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be... I don't think, I should say, there's going to be too many drop rounds. tonight, with some good points being picked up by some drivers. I think a couple of the drivers near the sharper end, the likes of Niels Kula, won't be able to drop their rounds, but will still have a pretty poor point tally for their standards. So that's another thing to look out for if there wasn't enough. But with less than 2 minutes left, the next time William Humphrey crosses the start-finish line will be the white flag lap. So these guys really are losing time through the hourglass, and as William Humphrey's coming around the final corner now, if you're behind William Humphrey after this point, you're going to be finishing your race on the next lap.
Here we go then. The man is out with the flag, and this will be the final lap of this evening's proceedings. And yeah, we'll go back to this battle. Just made that confirmation. Sheesby, Noel Brown and Bailey will have this couple of corners, and then one more circulation of the track to be done. And yeah, I think Robin has to be satisfied with that, considering his race start. Played the early strategy, came in very, very early, filled the fuel tank, I'm sure, pretty much to the max, and has driven very well from that time. I always find it quite difficult when you have to come in early, because you don't really optimize that, you know, the chance to empty the tank once, go in, fill it up partially, and empty the tank again. Noel Brown's been lugging all of that weight around for the entire race, but it hasn't stunted his progress at all. Back up into the top 4. I think that's the best that he can ask for at the moment. Francois Brandes on the back of Laurens den Ouden, and he goes around the outside at Sunset. This is in class. I don't think Laurens will give that one up easily. Drifts out wide, understeer into Francois. That will upset his run, and that's potentially another 2x for Francois. He'll be right on the limit here of disqualification. I think he just has to sit where he is for the time being.
Yeah, it's got to be very, very careful now. So tricky to make sure that he doesn't pick up a penalty of some sorts in the closing couple of minutes. And I mean, he'll still want these points for P10. Still will be a decent chunk of points. You know, looking around 30 points, which is good enough for him. You don't want to be losing out on those in the closing couple of seconds. But with the timer on 0, Greg and Velen on their final lap trying to fight it out. Velen just about holding on with a front end that doesn't necessarily look too good. William Humphrey won't care about this though. He's nearly at the end of the race.
Here he goes. We picked him up at this point last lap, and he's going to come round once again to finish 21 laps around Sebring tonight in this feature race. And the form continues. Maximum points once again for the championship leader. And we see home the very first Glasstec DXT 1-2 of the season. Congratulations to the pair of them, and congratulations to Yanis on scoring his joint best result of the season. Ben Smith, not a bad recovery, didn't have the best pit window in the end, but he maintains that finishing inside the top 4 in every round this season, and being on the podium in every round this season, bar one. It'll be Liam Fraser in the end who takes the checkered flag in the GT4 AM class. Great result for Liam. He'll be thoroughly satisfied with that. He continues that form. He won both times out, this time last week around Long Beach. That's 3 on the spin for the Mercedes driver, ahead of Edward Grobe, who will come home in P2 for his best result of the season. And sadly for John Ludbrook, he had the chance to win the race. It will be a podium, his 3rd of the season, but not top points, sadly, for the Porsche driver 214.
Andrew McKinley as well. He'll be, I think, the last driver to finish the race. He will be the only TCR pro to do the extra lap, which means realistically he could cough out now and still win the race because everybody else has finished behind him. So this is a procession lap for the Scotsman, and McKinley once again putting on an absolutely stellar display, and he'll be delighted, and the Lumen Motorsports team as well as a whole, I'm sure, will be absolutely overjoyed with the amount of pace that he's been able to show tonight. And it has been really good to see a few of these drivers really pull out their best when it matters in these big races.
Yeah, it is, and as you said, he's flying around the final corner. All the rest of the TCRs, apart from Jay Corley, have reset to the pit lane, so we can't cross. In fact, Jay is also, is he? No, he's still on the track. Yeah, we can't call those over the line, sadly, but we will call this man over the line. The 152 for Lumen Motorsports lead the way in the championship at the moment in the TCR Pro class, and continues that streak of fine results. Hasn't finished outside the top 4 when he's attended a race this season. crosses the line to bring home 100 points for himself and for the team. He finished ahead of Jay Corley and Logan McKinsey, who recovered nicely to get back into the top 3. It's a double win and maximum points for Ashley Brooks, who marks his return with 2 race wins ahead of Martin Kenyon and Hussein Sadok-Adesla, the final guys on the podium in each of those classes.
Really good to see everybody putting in some good displays here tonight, and not many DNS in the grand scheme of things, which is always a positive. Lots of drivers getting to the end of the race, lots of drivers picking up big points, and that's generally what we want to be seeing over the course of these evenings.
And this is something that the team over at GlassTech DXT will certainly want to see. It's William Humphrey on the top step once again, this time 4.5 seconds clear of his teammate Yanis Aubert, with Ben Smith, the championship rival, rounding out the podium. It's Mario Sidmer and Thomas Pugh back in the top 5 ahead of Jeremy Ulemans and Joe Spara. Mitchell Costa's inside the top 8 with Lauren Den Ouden and Francois Brandet just inside the top 10, closely followed by Jeff Hibbert. All drivers in that class scoring points again, which has been a bit of a thing so far tonight and which is always nice to see.
Yeah, and I believe that'll be reflected in the AM class, and it will be. Liam Fraser winning out, though, for the Moonshiners Racing Club after a hard-fought win. We've got Edward Grobe and John Ludbrook rounding out the podium. Again, though, not too far off of our race winner this evening. P4 went to Robin Noel Brown after he fought his way back through the order. Luke Bailey had to settle for P5 after the 2-2-1 made his way through. Dean Sheathby and Rob Gregg, Klaus Bellin and Joseph Preston inside the top 9 and within a minute of the race lead, with Niels Kula just inside the top 10, but over a minute away. He'll still pick up a decent amount of points. 36 it'll be for that finish. Charlie Stoddard, Matt Stace and Daniel Paul round out the 13 drivers. Again, though, everybody scoring some points.
And now then, a look at our second category, a smaller class, just a little bit, and it's the TCR Pro class that was headed once again by Andrew McKinley, the 152 for Lumen Motorsports. Of course, the only TCR driver to finish on the lead lap, but they will all score points, aside from one down there at the bottom, sadly. Jay Corley and Logan McKinsey will round out the podium ahead of Jaden Scotton and James Howarth, scoring some nice points inside the top 5. It's Anthony Hilton and Keith Calhoun ahead of Scott Malcolm inside the top 8, with Max Nevin Charney, what I believe will be the last of the scorers, ahead of Kevin Marshall, say, the 180 Privateer, finishing 6 laps down inside the top 10.
And finally, over to the TCR AM class. Only the one non-finisher here. It was Ashley Brooks who won out in the end. 6.7 seconds ahead of Martin Kenyon. Ashley Brooks really getting a decent haul of points here tonight. He will be joined on the podium by Hussein Sadok-Adesla, who finished in P3 and will close that gap to Gordon Hales. In fact, will overtake Gordon Hales in the championship after this race this evening. Jason Haddington and Danny Weir 4th and 5th, with Steve Rubino and Rob Smith not too far back. Andrew Fellows and Dean Sargent were a lap down, but will pick up those points for 8th and 9th. But for Gordon Hale, 7 laps down, the South African driver won't finish and will have to go back to his full background at Zolder.
Good stuff. Well, that concludes the summary of the race results, and we have a handful of drivers waiting to speak to us in the interview booth, so we'll do the necessary. And then we'll start bringing some of those guys in for a quick chat on how their evening's racing went.
It would be good to get a word with a couple of them, especially after a couple of good results. I think William Humphrey is a name that we are almost certainly going to have to speak to, and we can try and bring him in now. So, William, welcome in. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Good evening, Will. Welcome back into the booth once again. That fine form continues on. Just talk us through that session, if you can. Qualifying was pretty good. You got off the line well in the sprint race, and it must have been nice in that feature race to see your teammate overtaking your rival in Ben Smith, to just give you that little cushion in behind while you were extended at the front of the pack.
Yeah, that was honestly one of the best moments of this race. Me and Yanis had a chat before, and he said he wanted to get 1-2 or 1-2-3. So we're really happy with this 1-2, and we're going to hopefully take this form forward.
Yeah, good stuff. And talk us through this track, Will. I know you're a fan of Sebring, and obviously you've done what you came here to do. Was the preparation Well, maybe you didn't need to do an awful lot of preparation if you're quite familiar with the circuit.
I didn't get to do as much as I usually do, but I do love this circuit and I'm quite familiar with it. I just prefer it in a P2 rather than a GT4, really.
But generally for you, I mean, you just keep winning. It doesn't stop. I mean, you've had, what's that now? Is that 9 wins on the season? Yes, it is. No, sorry, 10 wins on the season. The one random 10th place you got at Zolder after the difficulties you had there. We've got Kota next week. Are you hoping to better that points tally? Because officially in the points column, you've got 550 points out of a possible 550. Are you hoping to get that to 700 next week?
Definitely going to try my best. I've not driven Kota in anything but an F1 car in the F1 game, so it's definitely going to be a challenge for me. But I have a little bit more time to practice this week, so I'm going to use that while I can.
Yeah, that was going to be my
And
question.
also, I mean...
Sorry, Derek, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and also on that point, how does your strategy change, if at all, from a format like tonight's to a format to next week's?
It doesn't change that much because it's still pretty short races, apart from maybe the start. I think you go a little bit more attack at the start of a 20-minute race than you do at 45, but apart from that, there's not a lot of difference.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question. On the circuits upcoming, obviously your form's been so good so far this season. Do you have a bogey circuit that you're maybe not looking forward to as much as the ones that you've had success with this season? Obviously, we're ticking down the order. I'm thinking perhaps the last couple might be a particular challenge.
Well, Kota's definitely one of them. I think Bathurst will be one of the you live and then you get a good result races. But after looking at the calendar, most of them seem quite a fun track to drive, and I definitely look forward to Brands Hatch because I do really like that circuit.
Yeah, that'll definitely be one that separates, the men from the boys around the trees, especially with the different classes. So yeah, good stuff. Well, thanks for joining us once again. As always, you've had the usual support in the chat, and I'm sure you've had everyone in the team with you supporting you over the line. So I'll give you a chance to give anybody a shout out if you'd like to, and then we'll move on.
I'm going to give it to Yanis this time, actually. He did damn well considering the lack of practice he did, and he showed some amazing pace. I'm genuinely massively impressed. And getting the 1-2 is always great, and yeah, really looking forward to the Kota.
Good stuff, Will. Well, congratulations again, and yeah, we'll see how you get on this time next week. Thanks for joining us, and yeah, we'll bring in a couple of other guys now. Cheers, man. Enjoy your week.
Cheers. You too.
Great to speak to William Humphrey as always. We always speak to William Humphrey after what feels like his endless win streak now. It's been an absolutely incredible feat to watch, and he just keeps rolling. Another driver who's been rolling, Joe, over in the GT4 AMS, has been Liam Fraser. And delighted to say Liam can join us now. Liam, can you hear us?
I can, yeah.
Hello, Liam, mate. Good evening, and welcome into the booth. So, a pretty good... I was going to say you've sort of clung onto that with both hands, with the championship leaders coming together at the start of that feature race. You got ahead of Ludbrook toward the end. So talk us through that feature race particularly. First of all, when you saw those championship rivals going off, and then toward the end, when you managed to get past Ludbrook, bringing home the third win on the bounce. Really some good form going into the second half of the season.
Yeah, the racing god's definitely shining down on me today. Watching... I think you've got a bump off the curb, and then just watching your two championship rivals go off in the feature race is a dream come true. I was doing okay for pace in race one, so I knew I was doing all right to John behind, but John really stepped up. I thought I'm going to try and break his spirit. I did none of the sort, and he absolutely stuck with me. Closed up, just about hit 3 TCRs, closed the gap. Slightly overshot my pit box, but I don't know if it's because that or the Mercs had touched fuel hungry, a bit thirsty, so he jumped me in the pits right behind him. I was just about closing the gap, and I don't think I'd have done it, to be honest. I think he might have got to slow down. He seemed to give me the place, and then he had an accident behind it, and I was home free, so... Yeah, oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes-Benz? My friends all drive Porsches, I must make amends.
Lovely.
Enjoyed it though, everybody was really good. That's right.
To be honest, I don't have to follow that, Liam. I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I was going to ask you about the fact that with the two of them going off in front of you, to my calculations, you're still going to be third in the championship going into next week, but you're only going to be 17 points off the championship lead, and have that 81 point evening at Zolder to fall back on. So how confident are you in going forward in the next couple of weeks to try and push yourself into that championship lead and into a decent enough lead as well?
Realistically, I'm aiming for third in this championship, to be honest. Realistically, I'm not. I am aiming for first, don't get me wrong, but I think my skills put me third at best. So I'm looking to at least bring something home, picking up where I can pick up if incidents like today happened.
Yeah, so this form, obviously continuing, like we said, it's your third win on the bounce now. Not to put any pressure on you, but circuits upcoming: Kota, Imola, Mugello, Bathurst, Brands Hatch. Do any of those stand out as a favourite of yours, or some of them maybe that you might drop off, or do you have any expectations for those final 5 rounds?
No, I'm scared of Brands Hatch. Scared to death of Brands Hatch.
Understandable.
But I'm looking forward to Kota. Kota's going to be a big round. I think there's a lot of people maybe getting slowdowns. It's a big track, lot to learn. Definitely going to be stepping up my practice routine, though, I know that much.
Yeah, as you get into this point of the season, it's worth it. You've found yourself in this favourable position. And as you said, it would be a shame to lose out on that third place. You've been there or thereabouts. Get yourself a trophy. Perhaps you're halfway through now. And you never know with the way the drop rounds work. It could swing in your favour by the end of the championship. And yeah, as we're seeing, Nils Kuller and Robin Noah Brown, they share the track so often. If you're just there or thereabouts sitting behind, you never know. You could do what you've done tonight and just slide on by.
Yeah, they're getting dead excited together, them two. They seem to be really building a decent rivalry, and it's working in my favour. Absolutely.
Good stuff, Liam. Well, I'll give you an opportunity to give a shout out to anybody if you'd like to, and then we'll wrap up and head on to somebody else.
To all the Moonshiner boys, to the wife for allowing me all this time to sit and race imaginary cars, and to Reverend Lewis from the local church for putting a good word in for me.
Very good, mate. Very good. Well, thanks for joining us, and congratulations. 3 on the spin. Let's see if you can make it 4 or 5 come the time that we reach Kota next week. Thanks for joining us, and yeah, we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good stream.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Liam. As always, great evening for him. He's now right in contention in that in the GT4 Championship battle. Finally, for the evening, we can have a chat with another one of the GT4 second place in the second race of the evening. It was Edward in the Sweat Sim Racing team. Good evening, Edward. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys.
Good stuff, Edward. Well, welcome back once again. And yeah, talk us through the session for you tonight. You've had a pretty good start to the season. You're there or thereabouts, fighting for that top 5, I would say. You're only a handful of points away from that. And the points that you brought home there, particularly in that feature race, will really go a long way to push you up the standings a little bit.
Yeah, it was actually the races today were quite lonesome, I would say. I had a clean opening lap, and that followed by the guys in front of me driving away and the guys behind me. I could drive away from them. So in that regard, it was a bit lonely. But overall, I kept my concentration. I think I nailed my pit stop today. And I think I show from the beginning of the season that P5 is definitely possible. And when I'm at the right spot, I can steal a podium away. I think in Long Beach that was also the case, where I ended up on the podium as well. And this week I did it again, so I'm pretty proud.
But this is a really good little run of form for you, particularly in the championship, getting up into what should provisionally be a P6 tied on points with John Ludbrook for P5. 3 races at Kota next week, 20 minutes each, very different in terms of the format and in terms of the circuit. Are you hoping to carry a little bit of this momentum through into next week?
I mean, I hope so. I think I was a bit unlucky at Road America. I had incidents in the first race, and that followed up in the 2 following races. So I don't want to repeat that. I definitely want to continue my current form and take that with me to Kota. And it's a track that I think offers great racing. There's a lot of space to give each other, and with the like swinging assist, it's like technical as well. I need to get like the track. I really need to study it this week to be competitive. But yeah, I'm definitely going for it, and perhaps I steal another podium. That would be great. That 5th place in the ranking. That's my goal for this season, definitely.
Yeah, always good to have a goal. And I just wanted to mention the Mercedes itself. Now that we've had quite a variety of different circuits, are you happy where you are in that car at the moment? Obviously, it's pretty much a straight shot between the Porsche and the Mercedes, and I'm thinking it could be quite favourable in the tracks that we've got upcoming. So, happy with your choice? Comfortable with the car now?
Yeah, I didn't really try a lot of other GT4 cars. I was looking at the Porsche as well. It was pretty stable, but in the end I felt most comfortable with the Mercedes and how it handles. So I just thought, like, I stick to it. Drove some races with it last year. Yeah, I would not change it in any way right now. I can try the Porsche, but I don't see a reason to switch up in the future right now. But you never know with iRacing updates. But I feel confident, so that's important.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Well, thanks for joining us, and congratulations once again. If you'd like to give a shout out to anybody, then we can do that now, and then we'll finish up.
Well, I want to thank all my teammates, Lawrence driving today, and Mitchell as well, and of course all the other team members driving in other leagues, and of course the sponsors that sponsor us, Neeskens Music and Bolt Personal Training.
Very good. Very good. Well, thanks, Edward, and good luck in the second half of the championship. Let's see how that climb through the field goes, and you never know where you might end up over the next couple of weeks. So thanks for joining us, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Speak soon.
Great to be able to speak to Edward Grove there after a very good evening for the 293, and it's always a pleasure to speak to drivers. Joe, have some good nights, and championships really are changing, which is great to see as well.
Yeah, they are. Lots. As we say, they're tightening up toward the second half of the season, which is what you like to see. You don't want them getting further away. The spread is definitely still very tight, up and down, all 4 classes as well. So much going on the track. Really hard to keep up with it, and I must say, I'm looking forward to Kota. Some very, very iconic corners around that track. Be very, very interesting watching them go through that snake section, particularly the 2 different classes, seeing how the TCRs handle that. It'll be slightly different to what we're used to seeing in the GT3 category, for example. But yeah, definitely an interesting dynamic for those guys. And then before we know it, we'll be into the ramp up toward the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this run's going to go. I mean, in the GT4 AMs, Niels Kooler and Robin L. Brown split by 4 points. Liam Fraser only another 13 points back from that. TCR AMs, Sarian Sauer now has the championship lead by 18 points over Gordon Hales. Rob Smith kicking around there as well. It is tightening up quite a great deal. Even tied places in the TCR Pros, 4th and 5th, Hilton and Cooley, now tied on 335 points. It's great to see it tightening, and hopefully we get more of that next week at Kota.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. So that will conclude us then for the midway point in this season. As always, you can get involved with us here at Evolution Sim Racing. Scan the QR code on screen now. We're halfway through both of our championships. We have a couple of announcements upcoming over the next couple of days, and then before we know it, like I said, it'll be the build-up to GT3 Season 8, can you believe it? And then our Monday series heading in to Season 3. So thanks to all for watching. Thanks to everyone who sticks around right until the end. And you'll catch myself and Dara as we look ahead to round 6 of the GT3 Split P Championship on Thursday night, starting at 8 PM. Hope to see you all there. I hope you've all enjoyed, and we'll see you in a couple of days.